"What were you thinking, young lady?" Captain Harris barked, his stern voice echoing through the cabin. "You know better than to disobey a direct order." The girl, barely out of her teens, stood at attention, her heart racing as she stared straight ahead. The captain's furrowed brow and tightly clenched jaw spoke volumes about his displeasure. She had been caught off guard, lost in her own world as she often was, and she had forgotten to secure the mainsail during the snow drills. It was a rookie mistake, and one that could have cost them all dearly. Yes, sir," she responded, her voice wavering slightly. He paused, his eyes boring into hers, expecting more. "Explain to me, in detail, why securing the sail is so crucial during a storm." The girl swallowed hard. She knew the answer by heart, had heard it hundreds of times. But now, the captain's piercing gaze upon her, the words tangled in her throat. Sir, if the sails aren't secured properly, they can become uncontrollable in high winds. They could rip, or worse, the mast would come down." "Go on," Captain Harris prompted, his voice softer but no less demanding. It's about keeping the ship stable, sir," she continued, gaining more confidence. "Without the sails under control, we would be mercy of the storm, and that would mean capsizing or being dashed against the rocks." The captain nodded, his expression unchanging. "And what does that mean for the crew?" It means lives could be lost, sir," she mumbled, feeling the weight of her error settle heavy in her gut. Captain Harris leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "You're a bright girl, full of promise, but this kind of carelessness is inexcusable. You need to learn to stay focused, to always be aware of your responsibilities." He paused, allowing his words to sink in. "Now, tell me, what do you think should be your punishment for this lapse in judgment?" Her cheeks burned with embarrassment. She knew that she had made a mistake, but the thought of facing punishment was almost too much to bear. I don't know, sir." "Think carefully," he said, his voice firm but not unkind. "What would you do if you were in my position?" The girl took a deep breath, her mind racing. I'd want to make sure that I never make the same mistake again, sir. And I want to learn from it." Captain Harris stepped his fingers and took a moment to consider her words. "Very well," he said finally. "You will report to Mr. McAllister for extra knot tying practice every evening for the next week. And you will stand watch with me personally during the next storm. That way, you have very clear understanding of what is at stake." Her shoulders slumped in relief at the prospect of extra work rather than something more severe. "Yes, sir," she said, her voice stronger now. "I'll do my best to improve." The captain's expression softened slightly. "I expect no less," he said, dismissed. The girl turned sharply and walked out of the cabin. The weight of his words and the lesson leaned heavy on her shoulders. She knew she had to prove herself, not just to him, but to herself, that the crew, that she had relied on her. As she stepped out into the fresh air of the ship's deck, she resolved to never let her mind wander again during drills. The sea was an unforgiving teacher, and she had just received a harsh but necessary reminder of its power. The week that followed was grueling. Each evening, she found herself in the company of Mr. McAllister, a seasoned sailor with hands as rough as the ropes he had so adeptly handled. His patience was as boundless as the ocean, as he painstakingly demonstrated each knot. waiting for her to follow suit. Her fingers grew sore, and blisters began to form, but she pushed through the pain, determined to master the art that could mean the difference between life and death upon the ship. As the next storm rolled in, the anticipation was palatable. The crew moved with a sense of urgency, securing every line that battened down every hatch. The girl felt the excitement of the impending challenge, her nerves taut as a bowstring. Captain Harris called for her to stand watch with him in the main deck. She knew this was her chance to prove herself. The rain lashed on her face, the wind howling through the rigging as the ship pitched and rolled beneath her. The sails had been reefed down to mere handkerchiefs, but the power of the storm was evident in the way that the ship responded to it. She had clung to the wet wood, her eyes searching the horizon, her ears straining to hear the captain's commands above the din of the tempest. His confidence in her was a silent pleasure, one that she felt every fiber of her being. As the storm raged on, she watched Captain Harris with newfound respect. His movements were swift and precise, his commands clear and calm. Never once raised his voice or showed fear, despite the chaos that surrounded them. It was a stark contrast to her own feelings of panic and inadequacy, yet she found herself mimicking his actions, her hands moving with a newfound sureness as she tightened lines and checked the lashings. The storm passed, leaving behind a calm sea and a wary crew. As the last of the rain washed away, the girl looked up at Captain Harris, who was watching her with a critical but not unkind eye. "You did well," he said, the barest hint of a smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "You kept your head and your hands steady. That's what we need in a storm." The praise washed over her like a warm embrace. She felt a sense of pride swell in her chest. "Thank you, sir," she said, her voice calm and clear. He nodded. "Remember that feeling," he said. "The sea is always demands your full attention. Give it that, you will find your place in this world." And with that, he turned and walked away, leaving her to ponder his words as the ship sailed on into its vast, open ocean. The girl knew that she had a long journey ahead of her, but she was ready to face it, one knot at a time.